Hey guys, Snowflarky's Emos here today with a new deck profile. This is my Skill Drain Beatdown Machine variant. This is very similar to my just Skill Drain Beatdown deck that I've previously uploaded on the channel, except this one goes all in on machine type monsters that are pretty good under Skill Drain, and of course all the good trap card and floodgate play that will stun opponents out of the game. So definitely just a little fun change of it. Lets me use cool cards I like Lionhearted Locomotive, as well as just just a few different synergies. So with that, let's get into the profile. Starting off with monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Knight Express Knight. So what's cool about Knight Express Knight is this monster is a 3,000 attack and 3,000 defense 10-star monster. It cannot be special summoned from the deck, and you can normal summon this card without tributing, but if you do, its original attack becomes 0. Those are the kind of monsters we want in this deck, things that we can just summon for free that have large attacks, because while their effect is going to lower their attack because we are going to play Skill Drain, that effect is going to get negated. So essentially we're just going to summon Knight Express Knight, and it's going to be a 3,000 attack monster. So that's pretty cool. The fact that it goes all the way down to 0 if you don't have Skill Drain is a little unfortunate, but you know, a price we're willing to pay because when it works, it is very sweet. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Fuzilier Dragon, the dual mode beast, one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh cards of all time. This monster is a 7-star 2800 attack monster that you can normal summon or set without tributing, but if you do, its original attack and defense becomes halved. Again, with Skill Drain on the field, that effect's going to be negated, so it's just a 2800 guy we can normal summon, which is sweet. And then last for the monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Lionhearted Locomotive. This is a 4-star 2400 attack monster. Now when this card declares an attack, its attack becomes half its original attack until the end of this turn. Of course, that effect does not matter as much when we have Skill Drain on the field. It's just a 2400 attack guy we can get for free. What's nice about this is if we don't have Skill Drain online yet, you know, 2400 is still an attack to get over, especially if we have some of the other stun cards that are still slowing our opponent down. Might be hard to deal with, and I've just always thought this is kind of a cool card, so you know, to fill out that monster space, I am glad to play it. And that is it for our monsters. This is a Demise style deck, so we are playing an incredibly low monster count. Next, getting into our spell cards. Starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This is a stun deck, so our extra deck is not going to be very useful to us, and as a result, we will be playing, you know, Pot of Extravagance, turning that extra deck into card advantage by banishing 3 to 6 extra deck cards face down randomly. We can draw a card for every 3 that we did, so banish 6 extra deck cards, draw 2. We are okay with that. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Pot of Duality is pretty sweet because, you know, in exchange for special summoning, which we're not going to be doing in this deck, we reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and add one of them to our hand, and the rest are shuffled back into the deck. Very important because we want to make sure we get to Skill Drain or a game-winning floodgate as soon as possible, and Pot of Duality helps do that. You know, whatever card we're looking for, it's going to grab it, and that is cool by us. And then next we're playing our 1 copy of Card of Demise. Card of Demise says that we draw cards until we have 3 cards in our hand. Also for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. During the end phase of this turn, send the cards from your hand to the graveyard, which isn't that big of a deal because there's a lot of spell and trap cards, so mostly we're going to be able to set everything we draw off of Card of Demise. And then of course, you can only activate 1 Card of Demise per turn, and you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. Again, not that big of a deal in this deck because we are not going to be special summoning. And last for spells, I'm playing 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure. This card is in here because this card wins some games and doesn't punish us. And like I said, it can win some games, and really powerful floodgates are how we have our win con. Dimensional Fissure just says any monster that would be sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead. A lot of monsters want to be in the graveyard, and then if they can't get there, there are some matchups that will auto lose, and that makes it worth considering. You can always side it out if it's not going well for you, but you know, pretty solid so far. And that is it for our spell cards. Next, we're looking at our trap cards, which is a majority of this deck. It is a very trap-heavy playstyle. First off, I'm playing one copy of E.M.R, which is mostly just in here for fun. It's a trap card that says, tribute a machine-type monster, then target a card on the field for every 1,000 original attack the tributed monster had. Destroy those cards. So it's kind of like an Icarus attack for machine monsters. As long as your machines have over 2,000 attack, you're going to be able to pop 2 cards. But what's nice about this is with Knight Express Knight, you're going to be able to pop 3 cards. So if your opponent is about to Raigeki your board, or you're going to lose your Knight Express Knight, you can easily tribute your Knight Express Knight to pop 3 cards your opponent controls, and that's pretty sick. And if you're using it on Fuzilier or Lionheart Locomotive, you still get 2, which is good enough to be Icarus attack. You know, this card could probably be sided out for something a little more optimal, but I think it's a fun card, and since this is a fun deck, you know, I'm just playing the one of it for fun. Next up, the main win con of the deck here, we are playing 3 Skill Drain. Skill Drain is basically how this deck works. It's basically the win con. We pay 1,000 life points. We negate the effects of all monsters while they're face up on the field. So all of our monsters that lose attack but are normal summoned for free suddenly have their attack back. So this is just a 3,000 guy we just drop on the board. And when our opponent's effects are negated, that becomes a lot harder to deal with. You know, we're going to be negating combo starters. We're going to be negating monsters that can't be destroyed. We're going to be negating monsters that have negates. So Skill Drain is incredibly powerful. And I'm doing everything I can with it while we have it at 3. So while, you know, is pretty good, and we want to see this card as quickly as possible. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Rivalry of the Warlords. Everything we're playing is a machine, so if we're in a matchup where we are playing against a deck that has more than one type of monster, you know, this card is incredibly powerful, and usually it works pretty well for extra deck building because it's very rare that every extra deck monster you want to make is the same type as the monsters you're using to make it. So this card basically is a continuous trap card that says each player can only control one type of monster, and they have to send all others to the grave if they have more when it's activated. So everything is machine for us, so we're not going to have to lose anything, but opponents may have to lose something, and that's pretty good. If you're in a matchup that doesn't care about Rivalry, side it out. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. This is just a card I've thrown in here to fill some space, but it's doing some good work. It's a continuous trap card that states all spells must be set before they can be activated. So it basically turns spells into trap cards. They're going to have to set spells before they can activate it. Now this is really nice because a lot of decks usually have a good spell or 2. So if you can delay them from playing it, that can buy you a lot of time. And specifically with Skill Drain on the field, and you are negating monster effects, that means spell and trap cards are going to be needed to remove your Skill Drain. And if you have Anti-Spell Fragrance and force them to not be able to play their spell or trap card right away, that is pretty good. So definitely pretty cool. It's doing all right, so I'm still happy with it for now. Next, the last of the floodgates here, I'm playing a copy of Macrocosmos. It's the same as D-Fisher, except instead of only monsters, it banishes all cards that would be sent to the graveyard or banished instead, and that's pretty cool. This card can get negated by like Solemn Warning and whatnot, which you know, kind of sucks, but doesn't happen too often anymore. Used to be a more relevant thing back in the day, but you know, if monsters need to be in the graveyard and you say no, you can win a lot of matchups like that. So normally when you're playing those floodgates, you got to adjust compared to, you know, whatever decks you face at your locals or in your group or whatnot. So just filling it out to show examples. Continuing on with our trap cards, though, I am playing 2 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is that we pay 1,500 life points when a monster would be special summoned or an effect is activated and negated. This is just a nice card to have. May not come up once you have Skill Drain activated, but it can remove monsters, and it's just a, you know, one of the greatest counter trap cards around. So you know, we're playing 2 copies. Be very mindful though with skill drains and strikes in our next card. You're going to be paying a lot of life points, so you want to manage that, because I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is what really is making Skill Drain so powerful, I think, is that if I have Skill Drain on the field and my opponent got their Harpy's Feather Duster, I have Solemn Judgment, I can say no, keep Skill Drain, keep my win con on the field. And that is incredible. Solemn Judgment is a card where we pay half our life points to negate a summon or a spell or trap card activation. So whatever thing you're really down to protect, Solemn Judgment will make sure you keep it, and for that reason, we definitely want that at max copies. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Lost Wind. Pretty cool card. When a monster, you can target a face-up special summon monster on the field, negate its effects, and also half its attack, which is pretty cool. That can get us in more damage with our big monsters if skill drain's already on the field. And of course, just negating effects of important monsters is good. And then when this card is in the graveyard, if your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, you can set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. So that recursion makes it pretty nice. So, it's a nice little thing to have. Maybe there's a better choice. We'll see. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. Now this card might seem a little suspect because, we're playing really high attack monsters. Who's going to be attacking them? And the truth is that you're not always going to have skill drain. So sometimes you're going to have a monster on the field that doesn't have a ton of attack. Well, that's okay. Storming Mirror Force can deal with that. And if they even summon a monster that gets bigger attack to try to out your big monsters, well, you're going to bounce it back to the hand. When a monster your opponent controls declares an attack, you can send all their attack position monsters back to the hand. So that's pretty cool. It's a non-targeting, non-destruction removal, which is always nice to have, and it can protect your monsters while you wait for a skill drain to come alive. And that's enough that it's warrant. I'm considering maybe playing Jelly Cannon in this so you can be a little more proactive with it, and if you have skill drain then your opponent's not summoning that much. If that was the case, I might be playing Summon Limit instead of Anti-Spell Fragrance. So, just some kind of removal. You can do things like Bottomless Trap Hole or Ring of Destruction, although that would be risky because you're already paying a lot of life points. Just some removal you could play right away, Dogmatica Punishment. So keep that in mind if you don't like this. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is a great card. If this set card in its owner's control has left the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, you can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck. We're not doing any extra deck plays, so we can fill our extra deck with really good monsters to summon off of this. And when we have all these spell and trap cards face down, you're having this card is going to punish an opponent who is going to, blindly pop a spell or trap card or try to play the Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm and wipe your whole field, which is going to be very tempting if you have skill drain. So just a kind of another assurance button that means you can punish them when they do it and that you won't lose the game if that happens. So yeah, pretty cool. We want to see that card. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. This card comes in quite use for my duel group because, this is kind of a more, well, I wouldn't say for fun deck, but it's a low power level deck, so I play it against a lot of things that are not as meta, a lot of things that have more spell and trap cards, I would say. And if you're in matchups where you have spell and trap cards to deal with, back row perhaps, you definitely want to see Heavy Storm Duster. It's a trap card that you can flip up and target up to 2 spells and traps on the field and destroy it. In exchange, you can't use your battle phase this turn, which doesn't matter if you play it on your opponent's turn. You don't have to worry about that. And that is definitely pretty cool. And then last, to fill up the last slot, I am playing 1 copy of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is a pretty cool trap card that says you can banish a normal trap from your deck except Trap Trick and set a card with the same name directly from your deck onto the field. That card can be activated this turn, but you can only activate 1 more trap card after this card resolves. So this card's pretty cool. While it can't get our floodgates or counter traps because it only works with normal traps, it can be used to skillfully grab anything we need. If we need a Lost Wind, we got 2 copies, so if they're still in the deck, we can grab Storming Mirror Force, which is, of course, fine. Probably its best use is that if we get Harpy's Feather Duster and we have this, we can flip Trap Trick real quick, set a Waking the Dragon so it gets destroyed by Feather Duster and Chain Link 2, and that will get us our Waking the Dragon summon. That is a really good play, mostly the reason why I like this. And of course, it can get me a copy of Heavy Storm Duster if they're both in the deck. So of course, you can improve your odds of being able to Trap Trick a card by maxing out the ratios. But, just playing around, I'm still satisfied with this, but we'll see. We'll see. And that is it for the trap cards. Going into the extra deck, there's not too much to talk about. Our extra deck is solely 15 cards to banish off of Extravagance and Waking the Dragon. So I'm going to include my segment that I recorded where I talk about my Waking the Dragon extra deck, and that'll be coming in right now. Next, going over our extra deck really quickly. This is not a deck where we, combo off and summon a lot of extra deck monsters. So our extra deck is just being used for us to be able to play and or side Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is a trap card that says if this set card in its owner's control has left the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, you can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck. So we're going to put powerful monsters in our extra deck to summon off of Waking the Dragon if it were to get destroyed by an opponent. And, when you're playing trap card based decks, you got to be aware of Lightning Storm, Heavy Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, stuff like that. And having a card to punish them for wiping your back row is pretty awesome to have. Now getting into my choices for Waking the Dragon targets, I'm playing 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. If your opponent pops Waking the Dragon and they don't have any monsters on board, you can summon this card, and it essentially says that neither player can summon monsters. So they can't summon monsters, all they can do is set, and if they don't have an out to this card, you'll just poke them down till you win the game. Do note that when it's summoned, it will destroy all your monsters, but usually not a big deal for that the advantage that it gives you. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. This is the target that we can summon if we're in a matchup that is very dependent on spell or trap card activations. If we have a card in our graveyard, we can essentially negate as many spells and traps as we want during the duel, because when a spell or trap card is activated, we just banish a card from our graveyard, send the tap card of our deck to the graveyard, and if we do, we negate the activation and destroy the card. It's not limited to once per turn. We can use it reactively, so in certain matchups, this card will just outright win you the game. Next up, I have 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. This is a 3,500 attack monster that's unaffected by card effects. That can be very hard to deal with for a lot of decks. It means we either gotta kaiju it, or you gotta find a way to get over it by battle. And, that makes it pretty hard to deal with. If a deck does not have access to either of those and they can't deal with this card, it'll just win you the game. So do keep that in mind. Pretty good monster. Annoying to remove. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Geomathmech Final Sigma. It's just Ultimate Falcon, but with 500 less attack, giving it 3,000 attack. And it's unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards while in your extra monster zone, which is fine. There's not going to be anything else there, so we'll gladly summon it there. It does have one little effect over Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, which is if it does battle damage to your opponent by battling a monster, that battle damage is doubled. So that can come in handy if your opponent has a monster with lower attack on the field when if this card is summoned and you want to do a lot of damage at once. So that is pretty cool. And last, I'm playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This is a 4,500 attack monster that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, so not as good as being unaffected, but sometimes still enough, in certain matchups. And in exchange, you get 1,000 more attack than Ultimate Falcon, and you get an effect where instead of attacking, you can just destroy a card on the field, which is it gives a little more flexibility. Definitely worth the slots. All these cards are maxed out at 3, so that I have some left in the extra deck even after extravagancy a couple times, and there'll always be something to summon as long as I haven't resolved all 3 extravagance before Waking the Dragon is destroyed. So that is it for my machine variant of my skill drain beatdown deck profile. So just a fun little way to switch up the monsters in the core. It lets you play Rivalry of the Warlords, which you normally can't do in my regular build. And you can play some fun cards like E.M.R. If you wanted to get more aggro, you could play some limiter removal. Just fun stuff like that. So, that's what variants are all about, really, or just doing something fun and wacky with it that you couldn't do with the regular build. So I'm having a good time with it. Very much enjoying Skill Drain at 3. Let me know what you think. Are you a Skill Drain player like me? Maybe you despise Skill Drain. I get it. Either way, thanks for checking out the deck profile. I'll get you in the next one.